This isn't gonna work well.
It's fun.
Sometimes it goes well.
Ha! Check me out.
And sometimes it doesn't.
Oh, come on, are you kidding me?
But every time, it's my railroad. Hey, welcome to a very frustrating and consequently short episode of It's My Railroad, the how-to show for regular people. On this show, I show you how I model railroad by the seat of my pants. I show you all the stuff I've learned, some techniques I've picked up, and of course, all the things that don't quite go according to plan. This episode is no different, and you'll see what that means in just a little bit. Anyway, we sure have a lot of fun here on this channel, hanging out as a community, and learning new stuff, sharing experiences. So if that's something you're into, why not just push that subscribe button, and then don't forget to push that little bell icon so you can catch future videos. Just before we really get ripping on this project today, a quick little disclaimer. I had a few things that I wanted to share with you today, some stuff to build on the layout. I was very excited about it. I spent a great deal of time on it, and things didn't work out well. And I'm gonna show that to you, but not today. I have to get the problems fixed. Some new materials are coming in, yada, yada, yada. So maybe next episode, maybe the one after that, I will show you all the crap I went through just to get to where I'm at right now, and then it's still not right. So anyway, a little bit later in this episode, I will show you some of those problems I had and what I do to remedy it. But we do have some stuff we can get done, and I want to get going right now on continuing to build the Helix complex. Now listen, I know what a Helix is, okay? So just so you guys know, we're calling this the Helix complex. The Helix complex is a level with a turnaround loop, another level with a turnaround loop, another level with a turnaround loop that also launches a helix. It's a helix complex. It's not one big helix. So a little confusion, I think, about that down in the comments, which I recommend you leave comments. So I just wanted to clarify that. Helix complex, Helix complex. All right, I think I've beaten that horse to death, haven't I? Well, anyway, to that end, what I'm really trying to get done now is to test the track that we put on that first level. So once the track is tested, I can paint it, I can ballast it, and then we can go ahead and glue on the next deck and just keep building from there to get up to the actual famed and elusive Helix at the top. To keep things moving on the old Helix complex, we're gonna get some wiring done today. That way I can hopefully test my train out on it, make sure it runs well, develop that little piece down there with the ballast and everything so we can just keep building on top of that. So let's get going on putting some wiring down on the layout. Obviously, the first thing we need to do to get started is to get the second deck of the old Helix complex out of the way. As you know, we didn't glue this down. We just sort of set it in there so that it can be removed to work on the bottom of the Helix complex. So there it is, boom, down on the ground. With that out of the way, we can see the bottom deck of what I'm calling the Helix complex. Now there's a couple of components here that we have to look at just before we drop feeder wires. One is from these 2 points back, all the way around that loop right there, that is going to be fed into the AR1, the auto reverser. When a train hits that, polarity's wrong, it automatically switches polarity, train keeps running. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. These two tracks right here are the block detector tracks. They go from here to the BD4, which senses the train and then will trigger this turnout back here to switch to always be aligned with the oncoming train. So just kind of the way I do it is I put a drill bit in my drill, and then right here, right between the ties, I'm gonna drop a hole. And one on the other side. And then over here, I'm gonna put in two. Even though one of these is fed from the normal busing, one of these is fed from the BD4, I like to just sort of overcompensate in dropping down feeder. So I'm gonna drop this one down pretty much in the same spot. Like that. So I got 4 holes drilled. Now, the drill bit I'm using right here is really oversized for the wires. And some guys would want to put a smaller drill bit so you don't put such a big hole, but here's my deal. It's easier to chase those down in there, easier to manipulate them around where they go here, and it's all gonna be covered with ballast anyway, so you know, I don't care. That's just kind of how I do it. So anyway, I'm gonna drill 2 more holes over here for this block detector. Like that. And then we can go ahead and send the feeder wire down. A quick note before we actually drop the feeder wires, I want to introduce to you this new protocol that I'm using here on the old BSR. We're going to make the bottom adhere to this protocol, and then later on when we move and I rewire the top, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to switch out all that wiring to match these colors because there's so many colors, I need to stay organized. Anyway, we've got black number 22 and we've got red number 22 wire right here. Those are going to be the regular power feeder drops, just for straight DCC power. Nothing special about it, okay? Then I've got gray, yellow, purple, and orange. Now, orange and red kind of look a little the same. Hopefully, I won't get confused there, but I'm going to use those colors to help me identify which of the blocks I'm coming from feeding the block detector, and here's why. Sometimes when I need to get under the layout and figure out what's going on, I got to sort of trace the wire all the way back by hand. This way I can look here and go, it's a yellow wire. At the block detector, it's a yellow wire. I know which wire goes where. So in the case of the auto reversing loop right here, we're just going to drop a black and red wire. It goes straight from here directly under the layout to where the AR1's going to sit, and then it hits the DCC bus. So that's pretty easy to identify. But then let's say over here we'll use gray, and over here we'll use yellow, and take those into the block detector. Bob's your uncle. When I put in the other 2 lead-ins for the other loop, I'll use purple and orange going to the same block detector, but then I always know where that wire is coming from. So anyway, with that as the preamble, let's drop some wire down onto this thing. So I'm gonna grab a spool of black wire because the existing protocol says black wires go in the front and the other color goes in the back. Well, I say the other color because we're switching to red. Up top we're using blue, but I prefer black and red for DC. I don't know, makes sense to me. So that's what we're gonna do. So it's a pretty simple matter. I've got that oversized hole. I should just be able to push this right down in there like that. And then pull it through the bottom. And you know what? Wire is not cheap, but I think that if you leave enough, I'm gonna leave a couple of feet off this thing and cut it. That gives me some flexibility under the layout to get things done. Now that one's gonna go to the AR1, but this one right here is actually going to go to just the DCC busing. And yet we'll do the same thing. We'll pull it out basically the same distance. And just cut it off. And then we'll grab the wire for the second BD loop. And here's the thing that I'll do. I'll go ahead and grab this wire and pull it all the way out. Grab all these kind of as an array and keep pulling it till they're all the same length. This way, however the splicing works, I've always got the same length of wire. Anyway, that's just how I do it. Why don't we just go ahead and run our block detector wire down. And then for this one, just for the heck of it, we're gonna use yellow wire. Stick it right down in that little hole there. So then we grab, again, for the AR1, let's go ahead and put a red one down there because it goes from the AR1 directly to DCC. All right, so I've got all the feeder wires down through the layout. I went through and I tinned them and then I soldered them to the track. I'm not gonna show you right now how we did that because I've shown you before and I will show you again as we move forward. Instead, what I'd like to do is take you on this little frustrating journey I went on trying to get ready for this episode. And it starts with this. Since we're gonna be putting this track in and since we're gonna heat it up and make sure it works before we put the next level in, I decided, let's go all the way, baby. I'm gonna put in my switch motors, the controls, everything, and just see if these auto reversing loop, auto switching turnout thing, whatever it's called, is gonna work well. and that's when all hell broke loose for yours truly. It started out simple enough. I drilled a hole through the top of the layout to receive the rod, the switch motor rod that comes up and actually throws the points. Easy enough. Then I went through and I drilled me a little hole in the turnout throw bar that the little wire is going to go in that slides it back and forth. I don't really know what size it is because none of my little drill bits have an indication as to their size. But anyway, put it in my pin vise, drilled a hole through the turnout, boom, prepped the turnout for installation. That's good times. Then I went through and took the Cobalt switch motor and mounted it to the bottom of the deck and fed the little wire up into the throw bar. Then I hooked that up to the DCC and programmed it, and then I was able to throw the switch left or right with my cab. That worked out okay, and I thought to myself, well, let's keep going, baby. So I got my Digitrax BD4. It is a block detector that will sense when a train is on an isolated or insulated piece of track, and that tells something to go do something with itself. Well, in the case of our layout, there's an output off that BD4 that is supposed to work like a switch, a push button switch that will tell the turnout to flip left or right. Fine and dandy. I put in the Cobalts because I was told I did not need a Digitrax DS64, which kind of controls turnouts and receives inputs from the BD4. Well, as it turns out, that ain't true, baby. I was online, I watched videos, I did everything I could do to get that BD4 to tell the Cobalt switch motor what to do with itself. Nothing works, didn't happen. So we're abandoning that project for right now. I have ordered Tortoise switch motors as a replacement for the Cobalt switch motors. I'll have a couple of Cobalts left over. They're fine and dandy for just using your cab to switch, not so great for what I'm trying to get done. There's another thing about the Cobalts that I'm not real thrilled with. If you look here in this video, this is a Cobalt switch motor throwing the turnout one way and then the other. Now note the speed at which those points move. Now I'm going to take you over and show you one of the ones I have on the layout that's controlled by a Tortoise switch motor. Watch again and notice the speed at which the points move. You can see that the Tortoise switch motor throws those points about twice as fast as a Cobalt does. And in a normal kind of operating environment, that might not be a big deal, but on this layout for this application, it is a big deal, and here's why. I've only got 16 inches of track between where the locomotive first tells the BD4 what to do with itself and the turnout aligning itself. 16 inches. If those points aren't aligned when the train gets there, what happens? Boom, derailment, and unacceptable. So unless I run the train really slowly, that Cobalt doesn't switch the turnout fast enough to get the locomotive over the top. I did it by doing it manually as it was going through the loop. So again, here's the deal. I told you a whole lot of stuff that I'm going to tell you again in a future episode. When the Tortoise switch motors get here, we will go through again. We will swap it out. We will show you how we hook up a BD4, hook it up to a DS64, and then see how it controls the turnouts automatically. Now, one of the most significant things I needed to get done is to make sure the train will make it around the track without any problems, and that the auto reverser, the AR1, will switch the polarity flawlessly like it's supposed to. To connect the AR1 to the layout's really a very, very simple process. First thing is we take a pair of feeders and we land them on these two screws right here. Then we take another pair of feeders, I guess, that goes from these two screws, and they're the ones that actually connect to the track. Just solder those right on there. What'll happen then is as the train passes the boundary to where the AR1 is connected, if the polarity is wrong, which will happen in a reversing loop, the AR1 senses it and switches the polarity like that, quicker than the breaker on your booster will kill the whole layout. The AR1 also has some adjustment to it. If when your locomotive crosses that boundary, your whole system shuts down, that means it's not sensitive enough. You turn this little rheostat kind of thing here, and you turn it counterclockwise, keep turning it until you get to the point where that no longer happens. The opposite is also true. If that thing's going click, clack, click, clack, click, clack, if it trips more than once as the train makes it around the loop, that means it's way too sensitive. So you take and you turn that rheostat clockwise until that stops happening. I really love them. They're easy to set up and work with. So I got both of the AR1s installed for both of the bottom turnaround loops. What I like to do now is put a train on there, run the train around the loop, make sure the AR1 trips when it's supposed to and how it's supposed to, and make sure the train doesn't struggle, have any problems getting around the loop. So let's take a look at that right now. It looks like the train makes it around without any problems. It runs very smooth. The next thing to do would be to paint down there, put some ballast down there, and then permanently attach the second level of the Helix complex. And that's something we're going to get to next week. If you haven't subscribed, why don't you do it now and push the bell icon so you don't miss that episode. Until next time, my name is Steve Brown. Rail on, my friends.